another in my Civil War campaign series, Marching Through Georgia. We're getting towards the bottom of the barrel. I got the expansion to Lee Takes Command of Grant Takes Command. I can't play both of the expansions to that because I don't have Autumn of Glory. This was a little interesting. First of all, nice long map with the Union positioned up here, the Confederates here, and Atlanta here. I found some interesting things with this. Like with the others in the series, there's a bunch of optional counters, these starred things, that there are no rules for. They were integrated, and maybe I can find them on Clash of Arms' own website. I don't remember how I found the ones for Mississippi Fortress. I think they were on BGG. But I could not find rules for those optional units sitting anywhere in either Web Grogner's or BGG. Kind of an annoying thing. If I really liked this, playing these out, if I had the tendency to play more than just once or twice, I probably would want to test out some of the options, which look like they're more troops. However, one of them appears to be something to do with these Cav markers, that I can do something special with Cav. I got no rules on it, so I'm stuck with it. This also has first edition rules. I'm going to use the second edition rules. I'll have to pull them out if I might need them. In particular, what I really liked was the rules that prevent you from just pushing your way through the enemy positions. I thought those were very important. While looking for optional rules for this, I did find some optional rules to replace that rule. I don't think I'll need it here, but I think we're fine using that core option. But I may have to dig up stuff out of Lee Takes Command, which I have the second edition rules for. So what's special here? And by the way, this is a campaign I know almost nothing about. I know Sherman marched through and burned lots of stuff. But what I do know is this is Joe Johnston versus Sherman. Before he gets to Atlanta, Hood can take command, and probably will, at some point during it. And you can imagine how good that is, having seen him in the Spring Hill campaign. When I did Embrace an Angry Wind, which I got kicking around somewhere over here. I don't know where it is. There it is. Which covered a little later, a little after this campaign, once Hood's already lost Atlanta. Hood can take over even if he dies in the game. You can just assume he lost a limb or something. They say he took a minor wound. Knowing that's Hood, he probably lost his head or something. Doesn't much make difference. Okay. We got chain of command rules. There's nothing too special here, except for the special rules resulting about Johnson and Hood. If it's the Union victory point phase, and the Unions are south of the Chattahoochee River, it's so hard for me to read this. This is the Chattahoochee here. So if we're getting close to Atlanta, Johnson's not doing an effective job. He might be replaced. The Union has to remain there through the Confederate side of the turn. And he's got to be in supply, trace line of communication to his officer, and the officer has to be able to trace it back to the Union commander. Okay. At that point, Hood is put in charge, Johnson's sacked, and the only orders he can give in his line positions at any point for the rest of the game are assault when he's attacking and counterattack when he's defending. That sounds like Hood. This means his ineffective and militia aren't going to play anymore. They're just going to hide in the reserve position from then on. However, if the battle's taking place in Atlanta itself, he doesn't have to do this. He can use any defensive order he likes. Or if the only Confederate units present are cav, and artillery, then he can issue any order he likes. And this is the idea that Wheeler was unwilling to follow Hood orders. If Hood's dead, you can bring him back. And then if Hood is booted up, somebody else takes his place. The formations, the Union has 3 armies in this game. The Cumberland, the Tennessee, and the Ohio. Tennessee's over here, even though there's a Cumberland unit on top of it. One of the big things that means is that the Union has some really big units. Their basic unit is a corps size, whereas the Confederates are at the normal divisional size. So they have a lot of oomph to their units. The Union home area is Area 1 up here. The Confederates have home areas of Atlanta and 125 and 127, which are probably way down here somewhere. 127, 125, the railway's going up to Atlanta. And remember, that's where you have to trace your line of communications to. Weather, as normal, we've got heat and rain. These work similar to Mississippi Fortress. The rain we've seen in each of them. The heat is just a weaker version of rain. It doesn't accumulate quite the same way. Rain affects the supply trains. If there's 2 turns of rain, they can't move because they're in mud, unless they're running down the railway. Okay, this game introduces the idea of supplies. Imagine that. All regular and militia infantry and artillery must be in supply, or else their combat capacities will be limited, and they might take straggler loss. Leaders and cav are not affected. There are supply trains in the game, and supply is checked each turn during your communication phase and during the opposing player's victory phase, and it lasts until the next required check. So you have to check twice a turn. Union supply sources are areas 1 and 4. We got a railway there. We probably have one up here. Yeah. And the Confederate are 111, 125, and 127. We know where 125 and 127 are. 111 is, good God, I don't know. Up here. Another route going into Atlanta. Okay. If a unit is in or adjacent to an area that contains a railroad, you can trace a path of railroad hex spaces free of enemy units, not counting dummies, ineffectives, or leaders, back to one of your supply sources. And then you're in supply. You need a crossing point to cross the river, though. The supply trains, excuse me, units are considered to be in supply if they occupy an area adjacent to a friendly supply train, which is in turn adjacent to an area containing a railroad hex, and you can chain these supply trains together to reach deeper. You may trace, there's some Confederates there, through mutually occupied areas, so long as at least one unit in the area is either infantry or artillery or cav, whether they're effective or not. Militia, dummies, and leaders and supply trains can't help you. Out of supply effects, if you're out of supply, you can't force march, you can't recover stragglers, your combat strength is halved, in addition to any other effects, and if you're out of supply, you have to make a straggler check. And first turn out of supply, you add +1 to the die roll, +2 from then on for being out. There's the supply trains. They can move 1 area per turn, cannot force march. They can't move at all if it's been 2 turns of rain in a row. If you're attacked by enemy units while alone, you're eliminated. Okay, this game also has entrenchments, and you can see the Confederates start the game entrenched. Entrenchments can be constructed during the game, during a friendly movement phase under the following conditions. You have to have at least an infantry or militia unit. They're done by stack, so we'll talk about that. It's a little different from the last game. The units will not move during the movement phase. The unit doesn't attempt to recover stragglers, and the unit will not declare an attack or engage in combat during the combat phase. It doesn't have to be in supply. Other units, other entrenchments don't affect your ability to entrench. At the beginning of the movement phase, you place an entrenchment marker on top of the unit. Pick and shovel side up. I guess that's this. It doesn't look like a pick and shovel to me, but I don't know. Yeah. So, right then. At the end of the movement phase, you flip the counter over to the entrenchment side and place the marker on top of the stack. Entrenchments are removed if a player leaves the area containing friendly entrenchment markers. Dummy units may not be the sole occupants. If you had 6 units and 2 entrenchment markers between them and 3 units leave the area, you would have to remove 1 entrenchment marker. Because based on the stacking rules, you have to be able to entrench everything. Well, what's the effect? You never get the attacker doesn't get a benefit for entrenchment. The defender, if he's entrenched, the start of each combat round, those units suffer, or at the end of each combat round, those units suffer 1 less combat strength point lost than called for by the CICs and FCRT. What's interesting about this is it's per wing, per wing location on the battlefield, but in the last one, Lee Takes Command, the entrenchments, I believe, impacted you. If you were attacked by 2 different units, I believe, or 2 different wings, I believe you were protected against both of those wings. That's how I played it. Here it seems very clear that they're not, and the errata seems to indicate they're not. Right? Cav and artillery, they get the entrenchment benefit if defending an entrenched line position, even if alone or stacked with each other. Remember, somebody else had to dig it. And the line position deployment restrictions, if a single stack of units occupying an entrenchment marker is deployed during the combat phase into 2 or more line positions, only one of those positions actually occupies the entrenchment and receives the entrenchment benefit. So you're going to have some complexity in terms of entrenchments interfering with stacking, with the battle board, and all kind of stuff like that. We'll figure that out. Okay. Whoa! Normally, infantry cannot leave an area occupied by the enemy except by engaging in combat or other restrictive methods. Confederate units, however, can leave the enemy-occupied area if it's the shortest route toward an area containing a railroad not solely under the Union player's control, or if it's towards Atlanta. There's Walthall's division, which can be created out of, there's 3 brigades you can build it out of. And once it's brought into play, it becomes a regular infantry division. Atlanta, hastily fortified. The Confederates can claim defensive bonuses when occupying it. If the Union ever occupies Atlanta at the end of a turn, these benefits are lost. If the Union player moves into 109 from any adjacent area, he must declare combat. If he's forced to declare combat, if any Confederate units remain in the area after all rounds of combat in the area have been completed, the Union has to withdraw his forces to the adjacent area they moved from, as if they had played withdraw combat commands, same as if crossing major river type things. And the Confederate line positions all get free entrenchment markers while they're in Atlanta. Okay, there was something I wanted to say, but I can't remember it. So we'll keep going. Here, the rough terrain looks a little clearer to me. The brown is showing up better. It may just be my lighting today. Union replacement. On the track, there are, that's a number, I think, locations like this that say 2I. That looks like something from a Zucker game, but it's indicating that the Union's going to get 2 infantry replacement points. They must use these immediately. They can throw them anywhere. I don't think they have to be in supply or anything like that. And they just erase casualty points. Now, the Confederates still get their victory points for any casualties caused by that. And they're use them or lose them. You must assign them first to ineffective units. And you had to be in supply in order to use them. In supply and trace line of communication to controlling officer in the Union communication phase. You don't have to be able to go all the way up the command phase. I'm going to hold off on victory conditions because my dinner is going to start being done at this point. So I'll put these dice here and we'll be back. Unfortunately, also in this edition, I don't have the loss sheets, but I was able to pull them off the web. And my wife is printing them, so I get to steal into the victory conditions. So the game ends as soon as Atlanta falls. And the victory points, 1 strength point for Confederate losses, 3 for each infantry unit out of supply each turn. Wow. And then at the end of the game, stragglers are worth 1, ineffective units, divisions are worth 2, and 25 points for Atlanta. The Confederates, 1 for each strength point eliminated, 4 for each unit out of supply, only infantry and artillery in both cases. 1 point for each unrecovered strength point lost due to straggling at game end. 3 for each infantry corps ineffective at game end. 25 for holding Atlanta. Atlanta pretty much probably determines the game. Although maybe if you plow too hard, that can affect you. There's a number of different scenarios in the game that cover different portions of it, but otherwise that's about it. I have not read my way through the historical notes. I'll probably do so before I actually start, but I can't be sure, you know. I'm not all that interested in operational history, you know. One reason I'm not all that interested in the history, you know, in the actual games is I'm not all that interested in the history of them. But there you have it. I do find this this particular series an interesting one to play, though, and so I will continue to do so. Weird that a system like this diverges so much. So, for example, the Mississippi Fortress, I think, were 1-day turns. These guys are 3-day turns, with battles possibly raging, you know, for multiple days, multiple rounds in them. Well, for multiple turns from what I've seen of it. We'll see if that ends up working out that way in this one. And then this one also has a focus with the supply wagons, etc., on making the railway links very important. The distances are larger in this one. It's like every one is a fairly different interpretation of the core system. I'm kind of left with a, it's, although it's a very different system, it's clearly a system. The differences in scale and in what is being done in the games, in each one that I've played, is significant enough that I feel like I'm playing very, very different types of games, which feels a little odd for something that is such a system. Anyway, I flipped over my Confederates. I know where, you know, the starting conditions are. My plan is to try and subvert the Confederate position by cutting off supply. That seems to be the best way to go about things, rather than just try to batter my way through what is really good terrain and entrenchments in it. It's not going to be easy, though. There's one rail line running down to Atlanta. That is going to direct the entire game, essentially. All right, I'll get started. Get off with good weather, move the Union units. But I want to jump into, once again, the damn terrain. Now, somewhere or another, in your errata, there's a list of the terrains, but here's what I'm looking at. There's clear, only areas 15, okay, let's see, is this. 51 is clear, according to this. Now, 51 contains some of these little hill lines here, which appear to be what Ruff is talking about, but I don't think it is. So what we're saying is 15, is that this? Yeah. 23, yeah. Okay, so I think I have an idea of what clear terrain is. Most of this terrain is defensible or rough. And basically, if it's green, it's defensible. If it's got some of this brown in there, it's rough. This all looks rough down here. Okay. So this is all pretty nasty terrain. The rough is going to double combat strength. Defensible. What's weird about defensible Green tint over green. Any area containing the majority of this type is considered to be defensible terrain, regardless of any type of terrain features present. You know, what the hell? You know, not clearly defined by this wording to me. But it gives a shift, and it's not absolutely clear whether or not, you know, something can be defensible and rough, or the way it's worded, I would say this is defensible and not rough, and basically there is no rough terrain, which I know is wrong, and I'm just like, okay, whatever. So I don't know what to say. In general, there's areas that look clear that have defensible terrain marking, and I think that covers what they're talking about here. I think where it is rough, that trumps defensible, even though, because otherwise there would be no rough terrain, and I think rough terrain overall is going to be the rougher to get through. Anyway, I got to try to figure out how to defend against this kind of movement down here. This is threatening my rail line here. I got to do something about that. So we'll figure that out. When it's aren't moving, you can dig entrenchments and you have extra infantry in the place. So I've created extra entrenchment here. I'm planning on abandoning this, so I didn't pull that kind of crap there. But you know what? I have units that are there, so I'm going to put that there just to protect that. Otherwise, I am trying to cover the crossings over whatever this is. I can't read the writing in this game. It's like the Ogstranuku. I don't know. Yeah, I got no idea. Somebody who's local might be able to read this or tell me what these are. These names are. It looks like the Ustanula. Ustanula. Again, you know, Georgia is not an area I'm terribly familiar with, unfortunately. But yeah, and I guess that's the end of the first turn. Nothing exciting happening, just positioning. This game's a lot about positioning. All of the games in the series are. They're truly operational about maneuvering, and unlike in the great campaigns in the American Civil War, this series actually makes me do maneuvering with the hidden units. Yeah, I think GCA ACW has an option for hidden movement, but I tend not to play with it because it's not the base design. It's core and central to this. And, you know, you're not just like plinking units and whatever. There's no real desire to launch into attacks. You know they're going to go poorly in a way that it takes a certain amount of experience with GCACW to get that feel that, like, yeah, it's not worth trying. Unions continued moving down. I think they're actually covering more territory because the historical analysis shows that to the west of Rezaka, I think it's called, this thing, is where the first battle happened. Well, the Union's kind of sliding by that. Now, that's just Cav, but no reason to force march or anything. But here I'm launching an attack, and I mark that with the little, it's raining, by the way. Not just outside my house, but also in the game. First turn of rain, so it's not that impactful. But the Confederates are going to take a withdrawal before combat. They have Cav here. Nothing but Cav, so they can just do that and skedaddle back a little bit. That gives the Union a nice little marker here in case the Confederates attack, but no real impact. And the Rebs continue their pullback. You know, it's kind of a, hey, if the Union's not going to attack me, I really can't hold things until I hit this Resaca line here. That's where the railroad and the nice terrain combine. And I'm not finding these digging markers here, nor, like, these feel like they're intended to be two different types of, well, these guys are digging, kind of. But they don't really matter, because what I do is I flip counters I invert counters because I'm playing solo and nobody's watching the board while I play. I can mark the units that I've moved by inverting them back so that they're face down. So I turn everything face up before I move. That way I know all of my own forces. And all my opponent is face down, so even if I kind of know what he's got, sometimes I'll roll a die or whatever to make decisions. Basically, I'll look at the situation and say, can I dare it? So, for example, the Union's looking at this and saying, there might not be anything there because they didn't entrench. Is that worth probing? Well, we're coming up on a Union turn. Unfortunately, I don't have something that can probe there. But I do back here, and I could find out, hey, do I want to try to get across there? The problem is I can't force march infantry over there. So even if I get a cav there, Confederate infantry could come down and chase them back away. The rain turn, that's a problem. My supply wagons are frozen except where they're sitting on the railroad track. So like there's not one there. I think there's, I thought there was one here. Yeah, there's a supply train there. So I could conceivably move into here. Well, that's not very helpful, except that I'm actually considering the entirety of the Army of the Cumberland could move into there. I probably can't move the Ohio Army into there, but this has been giving way. It might again. I could always probe it, see what's going on, but then I might end up with a cav battle instead, and I might be outnumbered in that case, and that would kind of suck. So I gotta kind of think, is this rain gonna freeze me down, or am I capable of trying to bust through ugly terrain with entrenchments? Because he's building a cordon along this river, and there's not a whole hell of a lot I can do. Now, in this game, unlike in the Lee Takes Command, I can cross the river when it's raining. The bridges aren't out or anything. They don't flood to the degree that they prevent the ferries and bridges from allowing me to cross. So I could probe here, see what's there, see if that impacts me at all. Of course, I'm not sure I like that idea. Otherwise, I've got kind of a path coming down this way, at least until I get them here. But right now, they're spread out. If they cluster their army here, I gotta face something kind of nastier. So maybe it's to my best advantage to try to attack that. So on odds, I'm gonna take a shot at it. And I am. We'll see how that goes. So I've got 3 Union wings coming up against the Confederate wing. That's a big deal because I get firepower on each of them. I'm gonna fight this battle out as though I haven't done that before in the other games. Just, I don't know why. We've got in part because the entrenchments are different. So the Union gets to pick one of their launching points, and I think we're going to take the right wing here, where I have 42 strength points doing an advance. Now remember, it's raining, that impacts this, and these guys are doubled. This was kind of an iffy thing. Hardy prevents the Union from any chance of getting a leader bonus, which is a big deal because I actually have 2 Union armies here. So I would have possibly 2 advances. Unfortunately, one of them's Ord, who's not going to give me any advantage. The other one's Thomas, who would if he struck an open group. Okay, so what do we got here? We are in rough terrain with an entrenchment. Units may not force march. Defending units have their combat strength doubled. Okay. So 14, 23, 46 with no artillery. And we are doing, at least I'll do some of it, a stand versus 42 with an advance. This is the Confederates chose a painful thing for the CIC level. This would be really powerful if the entrenchments worked as I played them in Lee Takes Command, where each wing attack is resolved separately. But here it's very specific. It's at the end of an entire round that each entrenchment reduces the losses. Okay, so we've got advance versus stand. That's a base of 2. The CIC is reduced by 1 because of the rain, I believe. Let me make sure. Yes, CIC is reduced by 1. Okay. So we're going to be looking at a CIC of 1, and we're on the 1 to 2 table. It is not modified by being defensible terrain, because this is rough terrain instead. It's doubled. CIC of 1 does not do anything to anyone, so no losses there. Now we come to the firepower table. And here, both sides, have such high strengths that they're at the top of the table for advance versus stand. We look at the modifiers. Okay, the defender is going to get his 3-point defense for Hardy as a shift in his favor. So he'll be going from this column to this column. And the attacker, shift 1 column to the left for each of the defender's line positions adjacent to the one being fired on that are not being fired on this round. Yeah, that's a problem if you don't engage as the attacker. If you don't get if the defender is able to concentrate against a single place. Nobody get the withdraw command. So yeah, so we're looking at the Union on the second best column. And the Confederates get a shitty roll. The Union gets a good roll. So that's going to be 2 hits on the Confederates. Remember, we'll be taking one of those off at the end of the whole thing. And the Confederates get a hit on a 1 or 2. And they get a hit. So we've caused a loss here. Now, these theoretically should take place right now, by my understanding of the normal combat rule, which means the entrenchment is essentially used to drop this down to a 1. I'm going to mark it used that way so that there's no confusion. And now I mark the casualties. As I can try to show you. So Cleburne is going to take the hit for the Confederates. I have a choice of any unit. And here I have the 20th and 14th Corps, both of Cumberland. They're both big units. Looks like the 14th is a better choice to take the loss on. Those are resolved. We get a victory point each. Woot woot, nothing exciting happening. Okay, and I can clear these out now. I've used the entrenchment. Now I can go to the next round. Well, the Confederates have fired their only thing, which means now we're only looking at CIC table plus Union fire. So let's take a look at, I guess, this one. Okay, and we're again doing an advance. Now, the CIC may have gotten worse. 21, 22, 23, and the artillery is an advance. Union is ×2. So what were we at? 23 plus 6 is 29 to 46. That's still 1 to 2 with a shift. Uh-oh. I think I should have lost another Union unit. I think I lost another Union point here because I had 42 to 46, which was 1 to 2 on the one that is actually one of these. So we'll give the Confederates another victory point, and we will hurt a unit off the 20th Corps as well. Okay. So everything's Cumberland here, so there's no modifiers, and we take another loss on the Union for the CIC. And now it's firepower, but only the Union gets to play this time. I've got more than 20 shot. My leadership is not as good as Hardy's. The entrenchment has already been used. So I roll. And I get a 6. For the Union, that doesn't do any good. Okay. And now we do the last. We didn't count. We got to count that loss. Confederates get a hit there. And this is either going to be the 4th Corps or the reserve. The reserve can never get hurt, but I'm going to take this hit on the, well, can never be made ineffective, but I'm going to take it on the big corps. They say those big corps are fragile. About half losses, they're destroyed. For the Confederates, their units look like they have a little bit more staying power for their size, but their size is smaller. And we go to the next one, which is over here, and that's going to be 22 to 46. That's 1 to 3. We're getting worse. 1 to 3 shifting over is still a hit on the Union, but now it gets to fire, and again it's firing on this very good table here with no mods against. We get a 4, and that's going to be a hit on the Confederates. I've already used my bonus, so both sides are going to take a hit there, and I'm going to record them against the units here. At this point, we've done 1 round of combat. Yeah, we get another round in this game. This isn't Elite's command. So both sides are going to get to pick their chits for what they want to do next. I did not like the results I got there, so I'm actually going to shift everything to diversionary there. What about the Confederates? What's their feeling? I can get out of here and fall back and get some free movement. Movement that I probably want to take anyway. So I am actually going to pick a withdraw option. This weakens the amount of damage that I can do, and I can always fall back. But this allows me to entrench more easily, to give me a little bit more flexibility in my movement. I think I do not want to be where I am. I'm way out on the point here. It just doesn't make sense. So, I'm almost out of battery. Let me flip batteries and I'll show you the results during that. Okay, we're going to take our biggest unit again and compare. And this time it's diversionary versus withdraw, which is a 0. That can't go down any lower. What is our numbers? Well, here's where the game starts getting kind of painful in terms of looking at things. So the Confederates, and I had to refigure each time, so this 46 was not correct each time. But I think I was above 44 there. I'm not sure. The Union only caused 2 casualties total, so I would say yes. So instead of 46, I'm now at 44 for the Confederates. Let's take a look at the Union. This is 42. I think it's down 2 for the 20th and 14th. Yep. So it's now 40. I might have won it. You know what? I'm going to choose this wing first instead, because I might knock him down enough that I can drop him. Okay, so instead I have 21. 4th Corps, I think, took the hit. Yeah, okay. So 22 and 6. 22 plus 6, let's make 22 plus 6 is 28. That's going to be 1 to 2. So I'm on 1 to 2, but I'm over on the 0, so I don't take any losses here. I would be at 0 if he stood as well, and counterattack would be horrible because he's in defensive position, and that negates all his defensive position. So we get no losses from the CIC, and then from the die rolls, we're still both above 21. The Confederates have an extra point. Is there any particular reason that I want to not shoot at this wing? Not particularly, so I'm going to take my shot right now. And this is available again. So the Confederates get a shift in their favor because Hardy's better on defense than Thomas is on attack. And we get a 5, which is 1 hit, and a 3, which is 1 hit. So both sides take a casualty, and the Confederate one can be neglected or disregarded. They get a victory point because they killed something off the 4th Corps. And we find we don't have to take 4th Corps again. We might want to start taking reserve just because we're starting to chew into these big units. But we'll go to the next one. We're going to go here. Right? Let me think. 18, like that's 17 plus 4 is 21. I'm going to go with this one instead. So we said this was 40. That's a 1 to 2. That's not going to do anything. Ooh, I'm not on as good a table as I thought. We still got the same results, but I was 1 table down for both because we were doing withdraw and diversion against each other. So it was a 1 column shift to the left from before. At this point, only the Union gets to shoot because the Confederates took their shot. And we get a 2. That's going to cause an actual hit to the Confederates. So we get a victory point for that. And we cause casualties to the Confederates, which this time I'll take it off bait, spreading the damage around just to try to keep my units in fairly good shape. Although there are advantages to wiping a unit out, but you can't do that easily because only effective units can take casualties. So you might as well keep it spread. That was no longer there. This has been accounted for. So now we keep going to the last one. No, the Confederates are down like another strength point. So they're only at 43. We have this 23rd Corps is down 1. So we're at 17 and 4 is 21 to 43, I believe, which means we're at 1 to 3. That's not a good place to be because we're taking a hit for that, if I'm right. On the other hand, I get to roll again, and what did I say? I'm at 21, so I'm on the best table I can be on, but a 5 or a 6 is still iffy. And I get a 6, which means I do no damage. The Confederates get another point, and they cause a hit to the 23rd again. Not a good result. The Confederates withdraw. Because I took a withdraw, I have to do straggling. You might say, wow, maybe you shouldn't have withdrawn. Yeah, maybe not. Maybe I could have done more damage, etc., but I do get an extra march out of this, so that's maybe not as bad as you would think. So that means each Confederate unit has to roll on the straggler loss table. Are there modifiers? The weather is rain, so that applies no matter what, +1. And that's it. So for each, now remember, stragglers aren't permanent losses. As long as I rest and I could be digging trenches, I can get rid of that. So let's check for Walker. I need a 1 to avoid. Okay, so Walker gets 1. And the way you mark stragglers, there's a couple of different ways you can mark them. The rulebook suggested this for the first edition rules, but I've also got these little straggler loss markers. I can put them on the counter. I feel like that, like the ineffective units, gives too much information to the enemy. I would rather not be using them, to tell you the truth. So that's Walker. Bait. Bait also loses 1. And Cleburne Cleburne goes up to 5. That's still just 1. But I've gotten to march away. We fall back to here. We don't have an extra entrenchment, but we may have enough room for all my units. This entrenchment is now gone, and the Union has captured this space, and they have a combat marker. So even if the Confederates come storming in against them, which they're not going to in that terrain, there would be an opportunity to leave. Remember, the Confederates have some special ability to leave because they're on an absolutely defensive campaign. They can fall back towards their line of communication, basically at will. The Confederates continue pulling back. I didn't actually entrench anywhere new. Still way up here. But yeah, I'm pulling my supply wagon back. I'm pulling my forces back, essentially. A couple of the units, Cleburne and Bates, stayed in this space, and they recovered stragglers. The other unit, Walker over here, kept his because he fell back to here, just to provide a little bit better defensive positioning. Now, the Union doesn't know what it's really facing. It doesn't know how much is here or how weak that is. It got lucky here. Doesn't want to keep pushing as the Confederates are compacting or not. That's something we're going to have to see next turn, which will not be right now, because we're going to push that there, and we'll put a couple of these here for the Union. Remember, these 2 turns were both rain. That's important. I could actually just push this forward to there to remind me that the last turn was rain, so if this turn is rain as well, there's too much mud for the wagons to keep going. If this turn dries up a little bit, the wagons can move again. But yeah, they've been kind of frozen. All right. The Union Army is making a couple, or armies are making a couple of moves. One is a major attack over here, and that's continuing to pry at that point of the Confederate spear or whatever, because I believe the more the Confederates collapse back, the harder it's going to be to fight them, say, here. Of course, I might be able to come around with an outflank, but clearly this side, I feel like I'm already unable to move through. And trying to come around here might be difficult, and I'm trying to pry and get some movement here. I want to start with this one because I don't want to expose the battle here particularly, but get a couple of combat markers because these are the combats I'm declaring. And I've done, oh, by the way, it's clear weather now, and I've done a couple of shifts of the supply trains to support a strategy that's going to move more down the rail, actually, and possibly go off in this direction because I feel stymied here, to tell you the truth. Oh, I found something interesting now. Down here, odds column, shift 1 column if the defender's units occupy rough or defensible terrain. This is different than what's expressed here, but is sort of maybe in alignment with the way the rules are described, which kind of makes the rough terrain possibly stackable with the defensible terrain. So the fact that this map doesn't have any rough terrain that's not also green actually shows that that is correct. So, well, this might be a little uglier than I thought for the Union. The battle goes very, very poorly for the Union. They took 4 losses to 1 Confederate loss. You can see the score is racking up there. And the Union could choose not to keep attacking. If I'm not getting good casualties against these Confederates, it doesn't make a lot of sense for me to keep fighting them. So I think I'm going to halt there because I just don't see going further. And Hardee is not going to counterattack because, again, he would then become the attacker. The Union would have 3 wings with defensive bonuses and everything. They would just wipe him out. And the rebels retreat before combat with Cav here. Union was not able to prevent that, so they have succeeded in taking Dalton. And now we're on the Confederate side of the turn. Now they're going to get some reinforcements here, part of the Third Corps. I'm not quite sure where it's going to come in, but we'll see. I assume somewhere around down here. Well, this was something I wasn't expecting. The reinforcements are actually coming from into there as their first move, which means I have to deal with the Union forces right away. Luckily I have some cav, so let's see what happens. I know what's going to happen to some extent. So cav probe, I've got a cav probe of 3. The Union are not going to be able to prevent it because these are just dummies. And I expose them both, which means, hey, I'm safe, and I'll decide whether to keep going or not, but in general the Confederates are going to be falling back. But I have cleared a path down there, and I want to keep my cordon on the river as best as I can, but I also have to watch over to here, because I don't want the Union being able to outflank me easily. Rebs have successfully fallen back another space. We got a double entrenchment here, and I believe we actually have one there too. Because those guys didn't move. It's just a matter of I had to assign some infantry to do entrenchment. Falling back along here. And trying to get these guys through. This remains exposed for the Union turn. We move up there. We got some Union reinforcements coming in. But first, the weather. Here are the attacks that the Union made. One here, which exposed all the units, and this one where the Confederates withdrew before combat. I'm not positive there's a unit here, but I'm pretty sure this isn't very much. At the biggest, it is the Army of Ohio. However, how much can I use that? What I kind of don't think is that anything too big is going to be breaking through on this side. So I'm more concerned with defending that flank right now. And now the Union could decide to pivot back and try to put the pressure down this way instead. The problem with that, of course, is a river crossing that's opposed is painful. I would rather go around the enemy, but it's hard to go around the enemy in this game. You do not want to be out of supply. You will lose the game if you end up out of supply, just because that the way the victory points accumulate. So I can't go too far afield. I only have 3 supply trains, so I could come from here 1, 2, 3, or 3. So I can go quite far if I absolutely need to, but it's going to take me time to get into that position. It's raining again, for whatever that affects. I'm not quite sure what to do with the Union yet, but I'm trying to figure it out. I'd like to give the Confederates too much information by entrenching up here. That means I've got some real units there, but that could be pretty much any corps, as long as the Army of the, well, any army. The Army of the Ohio, I think, is pretty damn small. I don't think I have anything except the 23rd Corps available right now, but I could have left like a detached unit like the Reserve Brigade behind there to help it. That doesn't make it terribly defensible, but I'm just pointing out it is possible to do this double entrenchment that I did, even with the Army of the Ohio. It's not what I have. I'm launching an attack here. The Confederates do not want to reveal the Union force and lose their cav, so they're going to fall back, and that'll keep this this little combat marker there. And that's done. I did a cav probe here, exposed an empty flank before I moved any other things, and that helped me make the decision to push in this direction, because it's going to be harder for the Confederates to defend that line as things stand. I said I think what I did kind of tipped my hand, so the Confederates push Hood over here with already heading over here. And I'm going to want to get my cav out of the way. I'm allowed to retreat here. Do I want to? I'm allowed to because it's cav, yeah. Sure. And that leaves the Confederate marker here, just in case he wants to do something vaguely offensive. But remember, I can't go too offensive if they fill the spaces. Here's what's wrong. I don't have... The only place that I have that defensive rolls, the optional roll for defensive bonus in terms of you can't penetrate the enemy, is in another game, and the areas, the size of the forces, etc., is all different. So I probably shouldn't be using this. I'm going to look to see if there's a second edition rule set for this, but I don't believe there was online. Wait, I had more cav dummies. What am I going to do with them? I'll end up putting one in each of these. That'll give me more room to spread out a little bit. But yeah, I mean, the idea of trying to operate off of this, I can do it for a little bit of an outflank, but I can't run down to Atlanta out of supply. And the only rail line is right here, so I got to be kind of close to the rail line. And I got to control the rail line to where I'm extending. So extending from here, I could go 1, 2, 3. I can make it into like this space or something for whatever that does, but it can only really help me when I'm trying to take the rail line. All right, and these additional Confederate units, nothing more is coming in down here, so it's safe that I pulled back the way I did. Do I feel like another turn? See, the problem is I haven't gotten to play much at all tonight, but I'm fucking fatigued because I wasted my time on other stuff. But I think I'll call it a night for tonight and try to get this video up tomorrow. Should be able to get at least a couple more turns in tomorrow. You know, the turns take like 5-10 minutes, but I end up wasting so much of my day on other stuff like work, but things that aren't work too, like jerking off or whatever it is I do. The problem with the way the representation here is the Union was supposed to get 2 infantry last turn. I'm going to give them to them now. I'm going to have to try to keep an eye better on that table. It's very tiny print, and it's just not very easy for me to see that they were supposed to. I'm just going to delay it by a turn and say they get it now. They had the room for them, so that's not an issue. The only issue is, I mean, there's no advantage to having delayed it for the Union, so I'm not worried about that. The rain has stopped, although not here. You can still hear it on the roof. Running a little late this year. It's in a bit of a problem, and I actually thought about leaving the center open and moving and trying to push here, but I chose against it by die roll, really. Because that could have left me open to like a really horrible exploit up the railway line. But instead, I've got a position that looks like that the actuality is that there are forces here, real forces, the armies. And it's pretty damn obvious there's one here, but everywhere else it's not so clear. The idea of the Union making it here with anything real, very unlikely. But kind of unimportant, too. The point is that I can probably get, 2 armies into here, and that's what I'm probably going to have to do. But maybe I'll scare the Confederates out of there so that I don't have to attack at bad odds. Because if I'm facing something real, and I kind of know I am because I retreated before combat from things that declared an attack, so there's something real there, in here, I'm looking at my weakest army going against what's probably Confederate corps. I don't want to trust to that. Now, there's some possibility there could be like one little brigade in there that chased my cav off along with a bunch of dummies. And that's one of the risks of the game. But here's the thing. I have 3 supply wagons. I could go here, here, and here. Okay. That would allow me to trace supply as far as here. But even if I got a crossing here, there's no crossings on this river until I get to its headwaters, basically. So I'm just not going to be able to outflank the Confederate position here. This is something I have to deal with. How do I deal with it? Yeah, that's the question. Now, I might be shifting these forces, which were back here, I think, or something. I don't know, are these just a bunch of dummies? No. I think it's the Army of the Tennessee, to stand as the anvil, or whatever, to hold these entrenchments and shift the weight of the army this way to try to push that outflank forward. But right now, I don't want to be forced marching and stuff like that. That's hard stuff to do, right? Okay, on to the Rebs. And the Confederates pull back, well, they solidify their position is really what it comes to. We got their entrenchments still here. And they've entrenched here. They've got entrenchments running along the cordon line. Over here, where it's not too important to stop infantry from going, but it's important to stop cav from going. The cav could slip through and disrupt my rail line. And that's something that I don't want to happen. There's more Confederate cav, though, than Union cav, so I can probably hold them down. The Union probably wants to keep its cav nearby, but they might chance. If they're having trouble smashing through the line, they might chance trying to cut the rail line. And that would be an interesting opportunity. What are we doing here? Let's do another turn. Did a cav probe over here at Fairmont and found what they were looking for, which was nothing. Otherwise, you can see kind of the line. I've actually shifted. There's more counters over here. No entrenchment, though. And that may be a ploy at this point. There's been enough turns. Let me talk a little bit about straggler loss marker. I'm using these to mark when there's been a straggler penalty against someone, so that because there's a plus on there. But there's another way to record that if you want to keep the secrecy factor in play, which is you can put a number inside the little circle. I did that with the original time I was playing because I forgot I had those straggler markers. I think that's a better mechanism for recording the information because this, like the ineffective unit marker, I think just tells the opponent too much information, more than you should be getting in this game. Now we go over to the Confederate side. And nothing interesting. We got an infantry coming in there. We put a little flag or something there. And they have to decide, you know, are they being outflanked? Are they not? They're not sure. That's part of the beauty of this system is you want to find something out, you got to use your cav and figure it out. And, you know, otherwise you might end up completely surprised by the enemy. I'd say for a hidden movement type system, I think this works better solo than it does opposed. I would not want to play this opposed without being able to unflip all my counters and see what's going on the field as a whole. Now maybe that's kind of a, hey, maybe I have too much information in doing that. But on the other hand, I feel like my decision making would be hindered not knowing where my units were. I'd be pawing through them, looking for them often. You know, kind of like when I'm trying to find units over in Vietnam that I played recently. If the VC are trying to come up with an attack or something, I feel like I have to unflip all my units in a certain area just to get any damn idea what's going on in the game. And that's not something, you know, if your opponent's sitting right there, what do? Can you avert your eyes during my movement? There might be some information that the opponent should be able to get from what you move where. Or maybe they shouldn't. That could be there could be a gentleman's agreement. Yeah, we both avert our eyes during the other person's move completely, which would work fine. And the rebels do almost nothing. Swinging around here to screen that cav unit, make sure it doesn't do anything too ugly. But otherwise, we're really just positioning units back and forth along the line. We think we're in a pretty good defensive position. Yeah, we're on the wrong side of the river. Retreating across the river isn't as bad in this as it is in the Lee game, but you still would rather be giving them that harm. On the other hand, it's hard to tell what the hell is defensible terrain and what's not here. So for example, Calhoun here has a little bit of this brown stuff. Is that enough brown stuff? Like, it's certainly not what these are. So I'm kind of thinking that's just defensible terrain, because there seems to be a little bit of brown everywhere. And the game does have supposedly places that are just defensible terrain and not rough terrain. Again, the map representation is really problematic. Oh, and this is a militia unit kind of drifting its way up. I have another cav. Throw it here, I guess. I don't know. Put some fear into the Union. Nah. Put it over here. I'm a little worried about that, although it's stronger than it used to be. But if this is real, and I don't know if it is or not, and it's coming down, it could conceivably just cut my army off in a bad way. But yeah, I think that's it. Push this forward. We got no rain anywhere. And this one's going up, I think. Not a lot happens in this system. Which I like. I like games where, everything's not like constantly grinding and creating all kind of complex stuff. And that's actually one of the things I kind of don't like about the GBACW. I'm, constantly going to bring this up, but I felt like I was doing these piddly little skirmishes all over the place. Now, they can happen, but, and they probably should in a lot of cases. This is more me being, gee, I really don't know what the enemy has. I think I won't move type of feeling more than anything else. Because I don't want to bring on a big battle. I want you to contrast this with the other two I played. Mississippi Fortress. Grant was able to continually try to grind his way through. He was not facing a situation where it was just all great terrain. He had a goal. He could reach it. And he wasn't afraid of losing he wasn't going to lose his army trying to get to it where he was. And then in Lee Takes Command, there was a lot of fighting going on in that. So here it's more the circumstances that are directing that we're not seeing lots of fighting happening. So at least there's that, right?